You want to talk about the episode? The
Sure.
episode?
Yeah, yeah,
Episode. I think AJ said episode once, and I like made fun of him for months about it.
yeah.
Fucking episode. Just we had a kind of a brotherly energy. We're just way meaner to each other than we needed to be at times, and
Hey, man,
it was a lot of fun.
that sounds like it. Like
But episode, fucking
episode.
idiot. Anyway, he's a good dude. Love him.
I took a lease out on your heart. I took a lease out on your heart. Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun? Can I at least have fun?
Welcome back, everybody. We are Rough Draft Research. You are the audience, and together we are on a quest for Dynasty Domination. How's it going over there, Daniel?
Pretty good, man. I'm still basking in my dynasty domination. It's been a good year, but
You you definitely took the intro to heart, and I appreciate that about
hey,
you.
man, that's what we're here for. It just finally clicked in. Maybe for the belt next year, but
Hey,
I
hopefully
guess
we're
I've
both
got a
in
belt.
there.
I'll have to put a. I have a belt coming my way. I think we do
That's
the
awesome.
exchange at the draft, which will be later this summer 2025. But we'll definitely have some hardware in this in the studio. Something to look forward to, man. How are you doing, Christian?
I'm doing well. I will have no hardware. I did get a neon Packers helmet from my brother for Christmas, but
Sweet.
I don't know where to put it. But it's gonna go up somewhere in here. We'll see. But that's gonna be all the hardware I got for you. But
All right.
hopefully next year I got something cooking.
Well, we'll be
But
battling.
that we're not here to talk about next year yet. We're almost
Oh yeah.
there. Few
We're this is a
weeks.
very reflective episode.
But we are on reflection, projection, whatever you want to call
Reflection
it.
Avenue.
Reflection Avenue. Yep. Because we are going to hit you with two separate little segments this week. And if you followed us on the season all year, you know I did the rookie roundup every week until about
Sure.
half halfway through, a little over halfway through the season. I did the mid-season rookie tier list, and I said then that at the end of the year, I was going to see if anybody made any movement throughout the different tiers, and we are here. This is what we're going to do this episode. So this is going to be the final 2024 rookie tier list. So how it works, all the rookies are divided up into tiers S through F. And we're just gonna crack into it. Do you want to go down and up or up and down?
I'd like to go. I'd like to go down and up. Let's
Down
do
then
it.
up. Okay, so we're gonna start in the F tier section. Um,
Forget them.
so the F tier or the no faith in productive career tier. Uh, I hate to do this to these guys. Sure they're
Brutal.
all great people, hopefully. But it just their rookie seasons did not inspire me with a lot of hope. And I will be the first one applauding any of these people if they make it out of this doomed tier. But for now, this is where I feel about them for their career. So the F tier, we're going to start off with a hot name who moved down a tier from the midseason, and that's Jermaine Burton. Jermaine Burton has gotten sat again for off the field issues, and was a coach's decision to be left out basically the entire last half of the season. That's just not how you want to start your rookie career. He has all the talent in the world, and he's on a team with a quarterback that could absolutely take advantage of that. But it just doesn't seem like it's going to click for him, and we've seen this story a thousand times in the NFL where these kids come in and just can't handle it. So I just, unfortunately, I think that's where we're headed with this kid. Hope he turns it around, but I'm not feeling it. Following that, we've got Mason Tipton, wide receiver of the Saints. I mean, he finished the year with 26 targets on a team that was riddled with injuries, and he needed to start. And he also was a coach's decision in the last couple weeks of the season to be sat, which is just not what you want to see when you have a team that needs help with all the injuries they have. If you're being a coach's decision sat, probably not a good look. So now into some people that actually weren't sat. I've got Troy Franklin in this tier. He did pick it up a little bit towards the end of the season. I mean, he had 144 yards at midseason and he finished with 263. So, 120 more and an extra touchdown thrown in there. But I mean, this team needed weapons bad, in my opinion. They really needed a wide receiver too to Cortland Sutton to help Bo Nix out. And he just was consistently ignored for a 27-year-old rookie who we'll get into in a minute and just every other name that you could possibly think of. Now, to Troy Franklin's benefit, he is only 21. So he's got time to kind of develop, and Bo Nix was his college teammate. So we'll see. But I don't know. It just bad vibes to me coming out of Denver for Troy Franklin. Also, our next guy, I just mentioned him, the 27-year-old rookie,
It's
Devon Villay. He actually had a pretty decent little rookie season, 41 catches, 475 yards, and three touchdowns he finished with. But he's 27 years old. I just don't.
pretty spry.
He's already on the way out. Like in terms
Yeah.
of NFL career
He's on
age.
his
And
third contract right now.
like it just, I'm sorry, I don't, that does not lend to him being some valuable asset in my opinion. And he's been like fine, and had he come in and had like a Puka Nakua rookie season at 27, okay, maybe he can hold out for another 3 years. But he was just fine. And this to me is a team that screams that they're going to go after wide receiver talent in the draft and kind of surround Bo Nix with more weapons. And so I just see him getting pushed down the depth chart. A couple running backs to talk about for the F tier. We got Carson Steele. He was the meme of the middle of the season with the alligator. That's about all we need to say about him. Will Shipley, we both liked coming out of Clemson this year.
Of course.
30 attempts for 82 yards, so under 3 yards a carry, is not what you want to see. And
Nope.
then Saquon Barkley's on that team. So I just don't really see him really making a name for himself outside of any injuries. And even when Saquon Barkley wasn't on the field, it was Kenny Gainwell out there. So again, don't really see it for Will Shipley. And then Spencer Rattler stays in the F tier. He got a couple more starts after midseason, was fairly underwhelming. 4 touchdowns, 5 picks. Didn't really get the Saints moving at all. So just I don't really have any faith in him. What do you think of the F tier? Anybody need to move out of it, or is it pretty solid to you?
Um, no, it's pretty ironclad. There's guys like Carson Steele who need to be just on the like, no, you can't say their name out loud tier. Um,
That's fair.
the Denver pair, I just have to, I don't know, man. I have to wonder if like if there's something that gets established eventually. I'm not giving up complete hope for Troy Franklin. I mean, Marvin Mims started heating up towards this down
Hmm.
the stretch, and like he's a second year guy that was kind of ghost town. It's just I think there's a balance to this offense that hasn't quite been achieved.
That's
When
fair.
it was they're just like let's find a way to win, and the defense is strong, and Bo Nix is just doing random stuff. Cortland Sutton's out of control, so I think that there's opportunity, but I can see why there is no faith in a productive career at this point. But I would say Franklin's got the capital. He's young.
Yeah.
He's got some potential there.
If anybody were to move out of that tier, I would imagine it would be Franklin. Just exactly what you're saying. He's on a good offense. He is young. Um, so I wouldn't be completely shocked, but that's just, I don't know, just from what I've seen, it hasn't been that great to me. All right, so moving on, we will go to the D tier, which is the likely a backup tier. Some of these guys, if there's some injury or something to the guys in front of them, they might be useful, but I think overall they are not going to be what you need in a dynasty league, other than kind of insurance and protection. So we'll start with some running backs here. I've got Ray Davis. I actually moved him down a tier. He's looked really good when he's been on the field. Ended the season with 442 yards, three touchdowns, 189 yards through the air, and also three touchdowns. So, six touchdowns on the year. But it was all whenever James Cook wasn't around. Very rarely was he on the field if James Cook was playing the game. And then he's a 25-year-old rookie running back. And so that just to me just kind of lends to him being kind of logged into the backup role. He's probably one of the most exciting backups of the D tier, but I just think that is what he is going to be for his career. A solid backup to where if you're in a redraft league and James Cook goes down, definitely spend your fab on him, or stash him if you're in a deeper dynasty league because you can use him. But I just think overall, if Cook or whoever is the starter wherever he's at is there, he's not going to be very much for you. Kind of ditto that, and also why Braylon Allen got moved down a tier. He started off the year really hot. Week 11, 223 yards with three touchdowns as Brees Hall's backup. But then he only ended with 32 more attempts and 334 yards and still only three touchdowns total. And Brees Hall's there. Now, again, kind of like Troy Franklin, Braylon Allen is super, super young. So you never know what can happen there. But I just sometimes these bigger backs lend themselves to being the thunder to somebody's lightning. And sometimes that works like a David Montgomery. A lot of times it's an AJ Dillon type of situation. And we've seen AJ Dillon be a backup his entire career. And I kind of just feel like that's going to happen with Braylon Allen. Also with Audric Estime, who I moved down a tier from the C tier into the likely a backup. Worth noting, I changed the name of the D tier to likely a backup. It used to be maybe next year. Felt like likely a backup made a little more sense for the D tier, so I changed it to that, which is why exactly some of these guys moved. Like Ray Davis does feel more like a C tier, but just the heading doesn't really fit. Anyway, semantics. Uh, Estimate ends with 310 yards, two touchdowns, almost nothing through the air. And just again, seems to be like a thunder to somebody's lightning, which is nice to have, but I just don't see it being very fantasy viable. Now getting to some guys that did not move. We got Marshawn Lloyd, who that hurts my heart. I loved Lloyd coming out, but he was hurt all year. And honestly, Emmanuel Wilson has been great as Josh Jacobs backups. And that's really the main point is that Josh Jacobs was amazing and is still young. So for Lloyd to get on the field, something's going to have to happen to Jacobs and he's going to have to stay healthy, which I don't know. That's too many factors for me to really get into him. Also Jalen Wright. Kind of same thing with Josh Jacobs. Devon Achane was just so electric and great this year when he was on the field, and I don't see that going away. I do think Jalen Wright can be. I still love Jalen Wright and think it could be like the 1B to Devon Achane, but he's likely just going to be the two there, with Mostert presumably on the way out. Uh, Kamani Vidal also kind of ditto. Didn't really do much when he was on the field. He had one great game, or one great play, really. And other than that, was kind of non-existent, and then kind of dealt with some injuries. So he is in the likely backup role. Blake Corum he got injured just like a week ago, which is unfortunate for him, and hopefully he recovers quick. But he also didn't do much before that. He had 66 total touches basically, for 260 something yards. Just not what you want to see. I mean, you never know with Sean McVay, but with Kyron Williams looking the way he did, it's hard to imagine he gets in there. Our first guy that moved down from the C tier for the wide receivers is Jalen Polk because he had 12 catches on the year, on the whole year, and he was healthy for most of it. I kind of mentioned at the midseason one, I was hoping uh, that Drake May kind of started heating up around that time, and I was hoping that that would speak to Jalen Polk a little bit. It did not. He was pretty much non-existent, and now I'm blanking on the name of the other rookie wide receiver for
Javon Baker.
Javon Baker, and I actually just realized where is he on this list? Uh, he would be right about in here because he hasn't done much either. So we're gonna put him in the backup tier. I apparently deleted him on accident, so sorry for that. We'll just throw them both in here. Uh, I think the Patriots are gonna go after some weapons for Drake May and some protection, and I just see that room getting pretty muddied. Don't have a lot of faith in Polk. He should have. They didn't have anybody, and he still couldn't really make a name for himself. You never know. He could have a sophomore upswing, but not counting on it myself here. Gonna speed this up real quick. We got Adonai Mitchell. The chance of Michael Pittman leaving kind of makes him a little more intriguing. But on a team that's not going to throw the ball a lot, if you're not Josh Downs or the number one guy, and it just didn't seem to work very well with Mitchell. So we'll see, but I feel like he's likely a rotational guy. Jordan Whitington proved that he was a rotational guy because as soon as Cooper Kupp and Puka were back, he disappeared. Bud Means, just a step up above Mason Tipton. I feel like he looked a little better, but then immediately went onto IR kind of after we talked about him midseason. And then we got Luke McCaffrey. The coach at midseason said, Dan Quinn said that there were more touches inbound for him. The narrator said they did not show up with more touches. So I don't
False.
know. I could see Washington going after a wide receiver too to pair with Terry. So I just think Luke McCaffrey is going to be that third guy. And then we got Eric All, who I moved down a tier. I was kind of excited about him, but he went on to IR week 10. And I don't know. I just don't really see it happening. I feel like he'll be a rotational tight end for Cincinnati. All right, that's the biggest tier, I believe. How do you feel about that one?
Pretty solid. Those first three backs kind of make the heart hurt, especially Allen, but all tracks. I do wonder about Vidal if he's a more of an F tier guy.
Okay.
But I don't think anyone here needs to be moved up.
Okay.
So looking strong. Yeah,
Uh,
Cincinnati's a wild card at the tight end position for sure. That's just been a surprising little piece of entertainment on that
Yeah,
team.
for
I guess
sure.
it's gone now. I mean, shit,
Yeah, sad
didn't make the
day.
playoffs, son.
They did not. Poor Cincinnati. Should have won one more game in
It's
the middle
one.
of the season and you would have been all right. All right, well then we're moving on to the C tier guys. This is unsure but intrigued. So guys that have a little more upside than some of these other guys in the D tier. But here we go. We got Trey Benson. There's just a lot going on with him. He didn't have a lot of production. I mean, ended with 291 yards and a touchdown. But he was at 4.6 yards per carry. And then the James Conner injury, I know he just got signed, but he also got hurt. So I could see the Cardinals working him in a little more next year. So I'm interested to see if he can move beyond being just James Conner's backup. So we'll see about him. Ditto Isaac Garendo, who actually moved up from the D tier to the C tier here, looked awesome when he was on the field. 420 yards. Uh, that was great, but he's just been constantly nagged by injuries this entire time. He has like two going on right now, a hamstring and an ankle injury. It seems like every time I hear about him, he's getting hurt. So I'm worried there. And then the Christian McCaffrey of it all just leaves me a little unsure, but he did look good when he was on the field. Getting into some receivers here, I moved Keon Coleman down from the B tier to the C tier just because I would have liked to see more out of him. I know they got Amari Cooper brought in. He did end up with 556 yards and four touchdowns, and I know he was hurt, but 8.6 points per game is not what you want to see out of a Josh Allen wide receiver. Uh, the upside's still there, and I like his potential, but I'm just a little unsure of how that's going to work right now. Ditto Xavier Legette. Bryce Young really started to heat up towards the end of the year. It's looking like they do have a quarterback in Carolina, which is great for them. But 497 yards, four touchdowns, just under 8 points per game, fantasy wise, is not really doing it for me. But he does have the big play potential and the size, so you never know. Kind of right along with him, Jalen Colker actually ended up with just like 20 yards less than him and two touchdowns. He was a good story all year. It was fun to see him. But again, I don't know. I think the Panthers are going to go out and find Bryce Young a true number one. And so these guys are kind of up in the air, question marks to me. I moved Malik Washington up from D tier,
Yeah.
actually. For a few reasons. He started to heat up a little bit. He only had like four targets at midseason and he ended with 36. 223 yards, so nothing crazy. But Tyreek Hill has made it clear that he's gone. Jalen Waddle was kind of whatever this season, and Odell's definitely going to be gone. So I could see Malik Washington getting some more love in Miami. So I'm really intrigued by that. So unsure because it wasn't very productive, but excited at the potential. And then we got four tight ends here. I'll just rattle off real quick. AJ Bonner for Seattle looked good-ish towards the end of the season. Finishes a tight end 35 with four touchdowns. So not amazing, but with maybe Noah Fant being gone at the end of this year, you never know. Different offensive coordinator coming in after them firing Ryan Grubb. Jatavion Sanders, I moved down to this tier. He only got 11 more catches than the midseason, and that was with the Panthers offense that was heating up. So that was a little or sorry, 11 more targets, seven more catches from where he was at midseason. And that's just not what you want to see when you want somebody to move up. So I moved him down. Theo Johnson got hurt in week 14, was looking pretty good, and New York's going to get a new quarterback. But I did move him down into this tier. And because of the hype on Ben Sinnott going into the season and the fact that Zach Ertz can't last forever, but Jaden Daniels did use Zach Ertz quite a bit, I moved him up from likely a backup to unsure but intrigued. He only ended the year with five catches for 28 yards, so that's not what you want to see, but also Zach Ertz just firmly held that role. So I could see him maybe making a little wave whenever Ertz is gone. How do we feel about the seats here?
Yeah, I think you nailed it. The Barner thing, I don't know. I feel like he definitely looked good, but that team needs to just run those wide outs. But
Hmm.
no, it looks great. Isaac Grindo definitely has that intriguing upside. It's like the two sides of the 49ers RB coin, like they're
Hmm.
utilized in an extremely efficient way, but they do seem to disappear, like
Hmm.
just missing persons status on those guys all the time. So um other than that, definitely Trey Benson's role's got to go up next year. So I like that tier. It looks solid to me.
Cool, cool. All right, well then we will get into the B tier, and this is the promising, but I still have some questions tier.
Uh,
Um, Gonna start off with three quarterbacks back to back to back for this
okay.
tier. Starting with Caleb Williams. His stats look good, man. 3,500 yards, 20 touchdowns, six interceptions. Not bad. Finishes the QB 16. Was actually an improvement from midseason, but not much of an improvement. He was at 14 points per game midseason and 15 to end the season. You'd like to think that they're going to get a new, hopefully offensive minded head coach that can kind of help him out. Um, but who knows? But we've
Be
seen
Rex Ryan, dude.
maybe Rex Ryan, yeah. We've seen the flashes from Caleb Williams enough for me to still have him in the promising. He makes incredible throws on a weekly basis. So I could see him still tracking, but just not quite enough to get him into the A tier. I actually moved Drake May down to
Uh,
the promising tier. I used to have him in A. He started off looking great. He was the QB 10 in week 6 to 10. It's only a 4 week sample size. But then he actually finished the year as the QB 23, going from about 17 points per game to a little over 13, which is not what you want to see through 10 picks with starting in week 6, which isn't horrendously bad, but it's also not great. Now, it was a terrible Patriots team. They definitely are, he's definitely going to be the starter next year. So I'm willing to see, but I just have some questions about where he will ultimately finish. He could even be good, but just still kind of be like for
yeah.
fantasy, meh. Uh, Michael Penix got the
Oh,
start
oh.
in week 16. And for 3 weeks, he's been the QB 17, 15 points per game. Looks pretty good. Doesn't look incredible. 3 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, but some of those throws he's made were great. Seems to have a pretty good connection with Drake London over there. So
Uh-oh.
I'm intrigued. So I moved him up a tier from the C tier here. Now we're gonna get into a running back who actually moved down from the A tier to the B tier, and that's Tyrone Tracy. He had 554 or 545 yards at midseason, and he finished with 839. So not like a crazy increase in production. He went from about 15 points per game to finishing at just under 11 points per game as the RB26. And then weeks 11 to 18, he was only getting about 11.7 points per game. So he started off way hot and then kind of slowed down a little bit. There were some injuries in there that could have done that, but he's also 25 years old as a rookie running back, and I don't know that he's quite in the solid starter A tier type range to me anymore. Getting into a wide receiver here, Ricky Parasol. The only reason he's not an A tier to me is because there's so many bodies in San Fran still, and a lot of question marks. Like, what are they going to do with the quarterback position? How's Ayuk going to look? Is Debo going to be there? Jawan Jennings, George Kittle, CMC. But Ricky does look like a great fit in the Shanahan offense. Week 18, he had 8 catches for 141 yards and a touchdown. I like his game. He ended the year with 400 yards, and he didn't start until later in the season, only played 11 games. So I'm excited to see what he can do next year, but there's still a lot of question marks to me. And then Jalen McMillan is our first guy that moved 2 tiers. He went from the D tier
Ooh.
all the way up to the B tier, and that's because at midseason he had 109 yards and a touchdown, and he finished with 461 yards and 8 touchdowns. He had 7 touchdowns from weeks 14 to 18. So it seems like they started getting him involved later. It was a guy we really liked. Did some work in the tournament of 2024, if I remember correctly. Um, and so I'm excited to see him going forward. Obviously, Chris Godwin might be back next year, and then Mike Evans, but seems like they started to use McMillan. My
Yeah, it's good
goodness,
to
I'm
see
taking
it,
this whole
man.
episode from you. I'm sorry.
No, you're okay. I'm really enjoying it, but now I like McMillan a lot, and so I'm glad to see that he's up 2 tiers because he really did. I mean, to have 8 touchdowns, it's kind of incredible.
Yeah.
I don't know. The whole, I don't know. The last Tampa Bay game was pretty awesome. I don't know how much of that you watched, but it was pretty exciting. But I don't know, the Tyrone Tracy thing, tear down. I think that he gets right back up to the A tier if there's
Okay.
a viable quarterback option there, and these quarterbacks like I think that they all have the potential to be well. I think that Caleb and Penix have the potential to be pretty badass.
Hmm.
But I don't know. Can't argue. Definitely Drake May took a tier down, and we'll see. It's so unsettled there. That's wild that they won that game.
Yeah,
Uh guess yeah, whatever, man. The Lovey Smith move
that was a
makes
weird.
it's
Yeah.
it's I
I
love
mean,
it, man. I feel like there's everybody wins in that situation from my perspective. So
that's fair. I don't know how you tell a bunch of grown athletes to just lose a game. Um, I don't care if it helps draft position, they're not going to want to go do that. So I just don't get it. But it does suck for Patriots fans, and it really wasn't the best call for them. But whatever, man. They're athletes, they're competitors. We're gonna move into A tier, the solid starters tier. Bucky Irving moved up a tier into the A tier because he was incredible from weeks 12 to 18. He was the RB6, 18 points per game. Just looks like a real guy. Finished with 1,000 yards rushing and 8 touchdowns, and pretty decent numbers through the pass game as well. So I'm all in on Bucky. I think that might have been part of the Tyrone Tracy decline, is seeing Bucky Irvin light it up the second half of the year, and then Tyrone kind of meh. But
Bucky.
moving on to Marvin Harrison Jr. Uh, he was
Yeah.
just so maddenly inconsistent this year, but he did end with 885 yards and 8 touchdowns, 11 points per game, wide receiver 30. Not really what you want to see, but you never, he
It's a
could
hell
heat
of a
up.
rookie year. It would feel so damn disappointing.
Right? Exactly. Like it feels way worse than it should have been. And I think that was just kind of the hype around him. And so that was why he just stays as a solid starter. Roma Dunze moved up a tier. This one might seem weird for the wide receiver 49 at 8.5 points per game, but he had 100 targets. Um, and had 734 yards off of that. As a wide receiver three, he kind of reminds me of Jackson Smith and Jigba from last year, where everyone was really down on him, but the talent showed out in year two. And I'm
Sure.
basically just expecting that out of Rome with Keenan Allen likely gone. I guess I don't know that for
Mm.
sure, but it seems heading that way. Uh, the only other guy that moved up 2 tiers was Xavier Worthy. And that's because his second half of the year was pretty outstanding. Went from 246 receiving yards to 638 in the second half of the season. It finished as the wide receiver 33, but just really, it started to look like it clicked a lot better. And then we've got Hopkins as a question mark, and the Chiefs' offense should be a little better than it was last year. How are we feeling about tier A?
Love it, dude. The worthy up 2 tiers. I got the jersey on the way, man.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm excited. The 1-2 jersey leagues this year, so he got on the boat. Um, but yeah, I agree. I will be surprised if Keenan Allen is out of there. I mean, it'd be purely a money thing. I think he definitely showed that he's still worth the dollar
Yeah.
amount.
hmm
Um, and you want Caleb to be successful. So you keep that trio together another year, at least 1 year, little stabilization, that'd be cool. But yeah, I don't know what to say about Bucky Irving, besides I should never draft a wide receiver in the third round forever. Who
Okay.
cares about the values? There's like every single year. This reminds me of the time I took Dwayne Eskridge instead of Ramondre Stevenson, and then now this year I took Troy Franklin instead of Bucky Irving, and I was just never drafted another wide receiver in the third round, period.
Can't
And
do it.
you're the man. Like I'm preaching to the choir here. You're Mr. Third round running back over there. I love to see that.
Well, I
So
should have taken Bucky Irving instead of Kamani Vidal. So I,
yeah,
I,
I reviewed all our rookie drafts, and I think I took Vidal over him in one of our leagues too. So
damn.
feel it.
It happens. We get off these guys, but we certainly won't be off this last tier of guys here is the S tier, the superstar tier. Starting off with Jaden Daniels, likely offensive rookie of the year, QB5 on the year, almost 22 points per game. Not really much else to be said. Looks awesome, has his team in the playoffs. And I could basically, outside of rookie of the year, say that exact same thing for Bo Nix, a guy that I constantly struggled with how I wanted to place him, but he ended as the QB7 on the year at almost just a point two behind what Jaden Daniels does. So I moved him up a tier into the superstar tier, even though it made me sick to my stomach a little bit, to be honest. But
So
here
he could
is,
be rookie of the year.
I don't think so. I don't. That's Jaden Daniels' award.
I'm just yeah, it was fun though. It was fun for me to say that.
That's fair. All right, moving on to the wide receivers. We've got Malik Neighbors finishes as the wide receiver six on the year, 18 points per game in PPR leagues, 1,200 yards, and that's all with a myriad of horrendous quarterbacks throwing to him. So if we get somebody decent in there, the sky's the limit for Mr.
Yeah.
Neighbors. Kind of ditto for Brian Thomas Jr., who moves up a tier from A into S tier. Ended with 1,200 yards, 10 touchdowns, wide receiver four on the season, and also did it for most of the year with subpar quarterback play. So he really proved that what they had going down there in LSU was amazing with both those guys. It was not just one of them taking the heat off the other. So Brian Thomas, once Trevor Lawrence is back, is probably going to have an incredible year next year. So he moves up. Excuse me. Then we got Lad McConkey. I moved him up a tier. He finished as the wide receiver 12 on the year. Also had 1,000 yards receiving, just under 1,200, 7 touchdowns on an offense that doesn't really throw the ball as much. And he was the only target. Now, Quentin Johnson has been heating up a little bit, so maybe they do have themselves a nice little 1-2 punch there. But I think McConkey is Herbert's guy, and all the leagues I have him in, I'm very excited about having him. And then finally, how could we not have Brock Bowers in the S tier? He set the rookie reception record, 1,194 yards with as a tight end rookie and 5 touchdowns. Finished as the tight end one on the season. Not much needs to be said about this tier. I feel like they're all pretty solid. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to say anything about these guys. They're all, I mean, it's an incredible rookie class, man.
Mm-hmm.
I know last year I did I looked at like what comparing rookie classes, if they were like your full roster was just rookies starting, how it
Mm-hmm.
would go. I'll probably have to do that again, but I know for a fact that this year it's just going to blow these guys out of the water. I mean, it's definitely weak in the running back room, but
But even then, Irving and
incredible.
Tracy as your two starters probably not
Yeah,
bad.
you got Bucky and yeah, Tyrell. So I'll put those numbers together just because I have to now that we've entered the conversation. But yeah, nice call on Lad. I know you love that.
Mm-hmm.
It was a good year. It was a good year for football, man. A good year for rookies, high flying action. And now, yeah, postseason coming. So exciting, man.
Pretty
Gonna see
excited.
you know. Clash of Titans. We've got the Commanders versus
The
Tampa Bay on
Bucks.
Sunday night. So
Mm-hmm.
I'll be crying in the corner as Terry McLaurin and Mike Evans duke it out. I'm just like I have no dog in this fight, man. But can they tie for victories? But no, man. Thanks for going through the rookies. That was beautiful. Really nice to see that mid-season comparison to see how they finish strong.
Yeah, it was an interesting a little experiment there. But that wraps it up for the 2024 rookie roundup and tier list. So you want to hit us with what you got cooking up today?
Yeah, man. I'll
I know
hit
I
you
took
with
a
it.
long time, so
I was gonna say, yeah, it's a kind of a double episode, and I'm here for it. But no, everything you said was badass, and I'll try to follow it up the best I can. But this is what I do every year. I do an ADP versus reality.
Mm.
This is kind of just a look at basically the gap between where people were drafted and where they finished. There's going to be guys that were big risers and they're going to be big fallers. So follow me as we get down into it. I'll just say I didn't really consider anyone who didn't play at least 8 games. Um, I think that when you think about, ADP versus reality, you have to capture the injuries too, the guys who miss time,
Hmm.
because this is really about looking at the hope for the year and what the reality was. So, if the reality was a guy that was drafted highly missed time, then I mean you got to capture that as well. So, anyone who played at least half a season is getting put through the numbers. So I'm going to start in the quarterback room,
Okay.
and it was I don't know. I mean, I'll just get into it. As far as guys that finished in the top 12, it was 8 of them were top 12 ADP
Hmm.
guys.
Pretty
So
decent.
yeah, that's not bad at all. Um, so the 4 that didn't make it that were top 12 were let's see, Jordan Love,
Mm.
CJ Stroud, Dak Prescott, and Anthony Richardson. And so, I mean, like I was saying, some of those guys missed time. But You got to look at it as it is. Anthony Richardson only played 13 games, and then CJ Stroud played a full season. It just wasn't, he didn't have the support that he needed to be successful. Dak only played half of the year. Um, and yeah, then there was Jordan Love who played he played a lot of games. He didn't finish a lot of games.
Hmm.
But he had a little bit of disappointment. He ended up at number 16 after being drafted at number 9. Um, but for the most part, when you look at the gap between where these guys were drafted and where they finished, some of those guys are on the list. Obviously, Dak finished at 30 after being drafted at 10, so that's a 20 spot drop.
Damn.
But yeah, missed time. Anthony Richardson, he was very optimistic at the ADP 6, finished at 23. So to drop 17 spots there, um, makes sense. 13 spot drop for CJ Stroud. He was drafted at number 5 and went to 18. And that one was strange for
Hmm.
me to watch. A lot of it was right. Diggs went down and Tank Dell was banged up, and then Joe Mixon took off and it was pretty strong. But it gives me a little bit of fear when you look at these rookies having the success that they're having. That nothing's guaranteed. You know what I mean? I feel
Hmm.
like we all thought he was. I mean, obviously, these are redraft ADPs. He was, quarterback 5. Like people had a lot of faith in him. They were drafting him over Anthony Richardson, over
Yeah.
Jordan Love,
Hmm.
even over Joe Burrow. So, um,
Wow.
nothing's guaranteed. But moving on to the next guy, number 4 on the biggest drop was Trevor Lawrence. Missed a lot of time. This is a guy that was ADP 16 and finished 27, so it wasn't widely optimistic, but there was still some letdown there. But then the fifth guy is kind of surprising with a 8 spot drop. It was Patrick Mahomes. He was
Mm.
quarterback 2, but then he ended up finishing at the QB 10.
Wow.
So 8 spot drop, still a top 12 when it was all said and done. But we all know what happened there. The Chiefs kind of did what they always do, and now they're just a defensive team, and I'm into it. But when you look at who filled in for those spots that were not drafted in the top 12 but finished in the top 12, you get pretty excited. Most of these guys were the biggest jumps on this list. So Baker Mayfield, drafted at 21, ended up at number 5. That's a 16 spot bump. Um, and then you had Jared Goff drafted at 15, finished at 6, a 9 spot increase. Darnold, dude, he jumped 23 spots
Woof.
after being drafted at 31 and finishing 8, which was incredible. And then your favorite dude, Bo Nix, was drafted in the 23 spot, ended up at 9. So that's a big climb, 14 spots up. And then the last guy on the top 5 biggest risers was Geno Smith, and
Mm.
he went from 24 to 14, so he didn't finish as a top 12 guy, but he definitely was kicking ass. So got to give him a little bit of credit there. But yeah, I mean
Yeah.
that's the quarterback room. Just
Yeah, it was interesting. I mean, like you said, the CJ Stroud one's probably the most surprising. He was pretty much locked and loaded as like the next superstar. And then even when he had all the weapons, it didn't really work the way people thought. Now, hopefully, I mean, the sophomore slump has become less common or at least less talked about. But
mm,
hopefully, guys like Richardson and Stroud can kind of come back next year and improve on where they were. We were highly, highly optimistic on those kind of guys. And then yeah, I mean we've got a whole new group of guys with Bo Nix and Sam Darnold. Who knows what's going to happen with him and Baker. I think after a second year of being that good, has proven that he needs to be in that spot. So it'll be interesting to see how the ADP shakes out next year.
yeah, it will be interesting. And Goff, like, I don't know, maybe it's a big Ben Johnson thing. I feel like people have been doubting him long enough to where, like, at this point, they kind of have to buy back into him, you know?
Yeah.
So that's a pretty interesting conversation there. But I don't know, it was kind of fun. I love tearing into this kind of stuff, but
Yeah, for sure.
I'll just keep rolling into the running back room.
Okay.
And I'll say, like, on these comparisons for the running backs, I only have the guys that were top 32 ADP or finish on here. And that's so it doesn't run wild. There's like tons of, like, in the wide receiver room, you'll have like guys that are ADP 44 that finished as the wide receiver 61 or something. So we're
Yeah.
not diving in to that. We're trying to keep it mostly relevant, but that being said, there were seven guys that had the ADP top 12 that finished in the top 12,
Okay.
and the five guys that missed out on that, Christian McCaffrey,
Mm.
obviously, Brees Hall, Jonathan Taylor, Travis Etienne, and Isaiah Pacheco. Um, so those guys disappointed pretty heavily, but as far as like looking at the actual gap, the difference, as it were, only three of those guys, Travis Etienne, Jonathan Taylor, and Brees Hall, made the like biggest drop differentials. Because there were two guys that weren't drafted in the top 12 that helped with even bigger drops than some of those other dudes. And obviously, Christian McCaffrey doesn't count. He didn't play half a season.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, you've got Rashad White. He was ADP 14 and he finished at 20. So it's only a drop of six, but like in the running back room, a drop of six is kind of a big deal.
Hmm.
Kenneth Walker is also on that list. He was drafted at 17 and finished at 25, so that's a drop of eight. And a lot of these things are injuries. None of these guys played a full season, but they were still drafted with high expectations and let down in a big way. So that is that. What you get to looking at the guys that were able to be the top 12, even though they weren't drafted inside the top 12. You got Alvin Kamara, James Cook, Chase Brown,
Wow.
James Conner, and Chuba Hubbard. So
Chuba.
yeah, buddy. It's a fun list. It was a fun list to look at. But a lot of these guys were still like top 15, Kamara and James Cook, so they weren't hitting like the big riser numbers.
Hmm.
So if you want to get into the biggest risers, you gotta start with Kareem Hunt, man. So this guy was ADP 113,
Goodness
but he
gracious.
did finish as the running back 30, and he had himself a nice little season. So 85 spot or 83 spot jump.
Wow.
That's huge. Yeah, man. It's funny because the guys that dropped out, they're like, oh, a 6 spot drop or 13 spot drop. But no, these guys that jumped in they climbed their way in. So that was big. Bucky Irving's got the number two biggest rising gap. He was drafted at the 52nd spot for RBs and finished at 15. So that's a jump of 37 spots. Fucking impressive. But Chuba, dude, your main man, Chuba. He was ADP 42 um, and finished at 12. I gotta give him a lot of credit for helping me win a league for sure because I drafted him and that was a
Oh yeah.
huge jump, a 30 spot jump, and it kept me alive. And then we keep talking about Tyrone Tracy. You know, he was drafted at 57, and I have him finishing at RB 28. And so that's a jump of 29. And
Mm.
I will say some of these finishes differ from the ones you were doing in your rookie roundup because I kept it to weeks 1 through 17. So
Gotcha.
proper fantasy season. So some of the numbers may be a little different, all coming from Fantasy Pros. So thanks, Fantasy Pros. You guys are awesome. But rounding out these top five risers is Chase Brown, which like this one blew me away. I was not buying this. but he
He
was
looked great.
drafted at 36 and finished at 10, so 26
Wow.
spots. Incredible, man. I've got him on some rosters. I think I nearly traded him to you for like 2 seconds or something like that
I
before the season started. But
wish you would have.
I know I won that league too. So what's up, man? It was a
All
fun
right.
year, I thought. I mean, there's a ton of other names like we all like Dowdle, Rico Dowdle did pretty solid, and J.K. Dobbins. I mean, you can't be too sad at what he ended up doing. If he could have had a full season, who knows how it would have looked. But a lot of these guys ran pretty tight to their ADP, but the guys who made a big difference came way up, and it was fun to check out. So.
No, absolutely. I mean, like you said, Chuba and Bucky, two guys that we've been pretty in on. It was nice to see them pop off, and Chuba could do something similar next year with Jonathan Brooks unfortunately going down again and him getting paid. So it's worth keeping an eye on these guys. And the running back class of 2025 is going to be really interesting and could throw some more wrenches into this. But yeah, that was a fun RB season outside of like, Jonathan Taylor and Brees Hall not really being the guys we wanted them to be, which is crazy because I feel like for the most part, Jonathan Taylor was having good weeks. It's weird. It surprises me that he finished as RB 18, to be honest.
Yeah, he kind of finished really strong, but
Hmm.
he had some low spots for sure. But I don't know. I don't want to talk about it too much, but I did trade Brees Hall and Jonathan Taylor at the end of the 2023 season.
Hmm.
And so I like to see him on that list personally. But I'm a little selfish when it comes to my fantasy performances.
That's fair.
But okay, well, we'll get into wide receivers real
Okay.
quick. And for this one, it's guys that were drafted top 36 or finished top 36. So that really cleaned this list up. It was
That's good.
very, very long. But I mean, none of these names should really jump at us too crazy. Um, but I will say, so for the guys that were drafted in the top 12, only six of them finished in the top 12.
Hmm.
Yeah, so there was some disappointment. Obviously Tyreek Hill did not make the top 12. AJ Brown didn't, even though he had a good year. He missed a little bit of time. Let's see, Puka Nacua is the same story. Good year, missed some time. But Marvin Harrison Jr. didn't miss any time. And we'll bring him up later when we talk about big drops, but he missed out on it. So did Devontae Adams. And then the last guy was Chris Olave. So heart's broken, but can't hold that against him. He was
Mhm.
totally injured. So um, that's that as far as the guys that didn't finish top 12 that were drafted top 12. But like I said, only one of those guys made the largest differential, the dip, and that was Marvin Harrison Jr.
Hmm.
He was fifth, so like he wasn't the worst, but he was drafted ADP 9, finished at 34, so that's a 25 spot drop. Um, Man, what a vacuum when it comes to the hype for this
My
guy, but
goodness. Yeah.
yeah, gotta let it be. It exists. We can't change history. It definitely happened, and he's got a ton of potential. Let it be. So we'll count up. So he was fifth in the disappointment rankings, and then Debo Samuels was fourth. He was drafted at 15, ended up at 41, so it's a 26 spot drop. Missed a couple of games, but not enough to justify that drop. Waddle was drafted at 20 and finished at 48,
Jeez.
28 spot skid. Which is kind of like, I don't know, I've never really been a huge Waddle guy. So whatever, guess I feel better about that, but doesn't really matter. Then you got Amari Cooper, which was a weird one. He was drafted at 25 and finished at 58. So that's a 33 spot drop. Obviously, he showed a lot of promise with Buffalo in a couple of weeks, and the guy switches teams. Whatever. It is what it is with Amari Cooper. Maybe there's some potential, but The number one guy was just pure injury. Stephon did play in 8 games, so I had to keep him on the list, but he went ADP 21, dropping down to the rank of 59. So that's a 38 spot drop. You feel bad for the guy, but he was doing okay as far as like points per game. He was 17th out of the guys listed here going into that injury. So bit of a bummer, but that is what it is. It's you drafted him there, and this is where he finished. It was the reality of the situation. So if we're going to get into the 6 guys that climbed into the top 12 that weren't drafted top 12, it's a cool list, man. I kind of like it. So Brian Thomas Jr.,
Mhm.
he finished at 4. So I like him. He was one of the top 5 climbers. He was a 44 spot climb because he was being drafted at 48 and finished at 4. So that's gigantic. I mean, that's number 2 as far as the differential goes in spots climbed, but people were not expecting that clearly. A guy that was, hyped was Malik Neighbors, and he was drafted at 24, ended up finishing at 6th. That's an 18 spot drop or jump. He did not make the top 5 with that number, but I've got the most impressive part of all of this is that he missed a few games and still
Mhm.
finished top 6 as a rookie with the Giants offense. So he definitely has like number 1 overall potential in his future, and I can't wait to see it happen. So there's that. But JSN, he got in on the top 12 after being drafted at 40. He had a 33 spot jump, which does put him in the top 5 climbers. So give him props for that. Terry McLaurin, man, was drafted at 31 and finished 8th. That's not a top 5 number, but he definitely jumped in there and made me happy. Jerry Judy was drafted at 55 and
Ooh.
finished 11th, man. So that's tied for the second biggest jump with Brian Thomas Jr. So Jerry Judy, man, dude, color me impressed. So that's insane. You can't take anything from the guy. It's so wild that that's what happened, but whatever. I'll let you hear about it from Steve Smith. So, um, Lad McConkey, though, he finished out at the 12 spot, and he was obviously not drafted top 12. He was at 44th, so he barely missed out on the jump number. He was 32 spots, and JSN was 33. So he was a close number 6 on this list. But getting to the other 2 guys that were in the top 5 as far as risers, you had number 1 was Juwan Jennings.
Wow.
After being drafted at the 90 spot, finished at 25, so a
Oof.
65 spot jump. That's pretty impressive. He also missed some time, so I mean that's crazy. And then on this list as well, I think it's number 4 on the risers was Darnell Mooney, being drafted at 63 and then finishing at 27 with a 36 spot increase. And that was crazy because he started the season really hot, and he had a few hot games there down the stretch, but like he had the potential to be, I don't know. He was feeling like a top 15 wideout for a
Mhm.
couple of weeks there, but I don't know. Crazy.
Fell off, yeah.
Really enjoy seeing these numbers jumping around.
Yeah, pretty wild. The 3 rookies being in the top 12 is awesome, and Neighbors, Thomas, and McConkey. And then it's good to see a bounce back from Jerry Judy. I was always a big fan, so that is good to see. Of course, I traded him away right as it happened, though.
That's how
Uh,
I
and
do.
then and then JSN, kind of a guy we told you would probably have a good sophomore season. We were in on, and a guy we were out on, Marvin Harrison Jr. Not for his
Yep.
career, but the hype on him was absurd coming in when you had a guy like Malik Neighbors going off at 24 and you had Marvin Harrison Jr. going off at 9. It just never made sense to me and ended up working out that way.
Yeah, dude. Hey, allowed me to get Jaden Daniels at the 103 on a Superflex rookie draft. So thank you, Marvin Harrison. Uh, I always owe you for that one. But all right, let's finish strong. Tight ends. To be considered on this, you had to be drafted top 24 or have finished top 24.
Okay.
Um, and so let me look at the numbers. This one got a little dicey. So of the top 12 drafted, there were five guys who did not finish top 12. And most all of these guys were in the top five on the biggest fallers. So I'm just gonna roll straight into the that conversation, and then I'll
Okay.
touch on the other guy that was drafted top 12 that didn't finish top 12. So um looking at the biggest fallers, we had Evan Ingram, man. After having that incredible 2023 season,
Mhm.
he was ADP number 7 and missed some time. So he ended up at 30. It's a 23 spot drop. A guy that dropped 21 spots that did not miss as much time was Dalton Kincaid. Talk about a sophomore slump. He was tied in 5 on the draft, but only 26 when it was all said and done. Less than 8 points a game. Kind of a rough
It was
deal, even
tough.
if he hadn't missed the time. Um, then you got Hawkinson, who also missed time, but he was drafted at 14 and ended up at 32. So he wasn't one of the top 12 guys, but he definitely could have done a little bit better as far as the points per game of these guys. He was 15th. So it is what it is on him. Next up on the list was Dallas Goddard, another guy who missed a lot of time, but he was tight end 12, finished at 29th, 17 spot drop. And then you've got Jake Ferguson, dude. Like this one killed me.
Hmm.
He had a drop of 16 after being drafted at 9 and finishing at 25. So again, he did not play a full season. A lot of these guys didn't, but he had a less than 8 points per game when you've got plenty of these dudes hitting double digits. So wasn't getting it done even when he was on the field. I mean, obviously Dak missed a bunch of time, and it is what it is, but he wasn't getting it done. Speaking of not getting it completely done, we know that Kyle Pitts was the
Yeah.
extra guy that was top 12 that did not finish top 12. He had only a 6 spot drop from 8 to 14, but at this point, it's like, not a surprise at all. So let it be what it is. Um, so then when we get into the guys that had the largest climbs, there's some silly names on here, some silly things that have to be mentioned, but I don't break the rules. I run them all just with the numbers, and Austin Hooper had the biggest climb. Yeah. So he went from ADP 62 to finishing at 24. So he barely made the cut, but 38 spot climb. He was less than 6.5 points per game, so it's nothing nuts. But some of these guys did make a huge difference. Talking about Tucker Craft, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, ADP on the 37 and finished up at 9. So that is a legitimate jump, 28 spots. Pretty badass. Pretty cool to see. He was another guy that he kind of cooled towards the end of the year, but he was like tearing one up for
Yeah, he
for
was.
that midsection in there. So um, but Johnny Smith, dude, you can't. He never let off the gas. He was just killing it, being drafted at 24 and finishing at 4, 20 spot jump. Man, these are some big jumps to be up in the top. And yeah, he was incredible. So can't take anything from Smith. He kind of mopped up all that disappointment that Waddle and Tyreek were leaving on the field. So give him props for that. But a lesser but still relevant name, Noah Gray with the Chiefs. He was drafted at 36 and finished at 19. So give him some credit for the 17 spot jump. But I think that was like way less impressive than what Zach Ertz did, going from 21 up to 7 in just
Yeah.
like crushing it with a 14 spot jump. So I don't know, man. Some of these guys were really cool stories. Kraft, Smith, Ertz. As we look at like the all jump team, you throw in Darnold in there and then Jackson Smith and Jigba and Jerry Judy and Chuba Hubbard. Like this is cool.
That's a
I
fun
think it's
team.
awesome to see these
Yeah.
guys just redefine expectations. So
Yeah. No, it's been great. I mean, we were kind of in on Tucker Craft after last year. I was a big Luke Musgrave guy their first season, but then all the signs were pointing towards Tucker Craft, so getting that value was crazy. And the tight end's just so volatile that if you can get a guy that late that ends up being in the top 12, like an Ertz, like a Jonnu, like a Tucker Craft, that could really help out your season and not biting on a guy like a Kyle Pitts, which I tend to do. So, yeah.
yeah, it's tight ends like you want the guarantee, like all those Laporta drafters and everything. Like, he didn't make the big drop list because he was, he only dropped 6 spots from 2 to 8. But man, that you felt that drop
Oh, yeah,
big
big
time.
time.
So it's wild.
Well, all right. There you have it. There is one of our last reviews of the 2024 season. We might have a couple more things in store for you, but we are going to start cracking into the 2025 year with the draft upcoming. Obviously, playoffs are still going on, but that's not really fantasy relevant. But we will figure out what we're going to do. But until then, we've been Rough Draft Research. You've been the audience, and we'll see you next time.
Yes, we will be here and we will see you there. Have a good in between.